Welcome back. You're watching Crossfire tonight. The fight to bring back the BBI reggae is on after the two courts twice ruled that it was an illegal process. But this time round, this bid for constitutional changes has been taken to Parliament with the hopes of making significant changes in the executive structure. The Constitution of Kenya Amendment Bill 2021 in its first reading has sent jitters in the political space as it seeks to clip the powers of the Deputy President, introduce the position of Prime Minister and increase the number of constituencies, among other proposals. Now, the big question, however, remains, is this an idea whose time has come, or is it just pure political witch hunt? On Crossfire tonight, my guest, Ndaragwa Member of Parliament Jeremiah Kioni, thank you for joining us. Kiharu's Ndindi Nyoro, thank you for being with us here. And a former Mkurueni Member of Parliament, Kabando, who's joining us virtually. We'll be breaking down this bill for us and whether it will be yet another political ammunition to be used in the race for the top seat in the 2022 general election. Thank you for joining us. For any questions and contributions to this particular conversation, at Akisa Wandera, at KTN News KE, the hashtag to use is Crossfire. I'll be sampling a number of your views and questions to the leaders we have here with us in studio as we continue with this conversation. Gentlemen, once again, asanteni sana for joining us here on Crossfire. And perhaps I should start with you, Honorable Kioni, because this particular bill has sent a lot of jitters in the political space and beyond. Kenyans are talking about it, are wondering, what are we up to with this? What's the intention? Just break that down for us.
Let me start by saying good evening to the viewers, and appreciate you inviting me to come and engage with one another on the issues that are crucial to us as a nation. And allow me to say that I think it was yesterday or the day before when the ICJ made a ruling and wanted to take a part of our land and give it to Somalia. And almost without exception, all Kenyans said that will not happen. I haven't come across a Kenyan who has said that we will allow our land to be given away either through a court process or any other way. And why I mention that is that the threat that comes from outside is very easy for a country to deal with, because we quickly come together and are able to talk to it or deal with it with one conviction.
Yeah.
And like it was said at the General Assembly the other day by the Prime Minister of Israel, he said that what can kill a country, what can take a country to a point of no return, are issues that are from within. And he actually said, if a country is torn from within, you may never be able to deal to get back a country. And a document that tries to keep us together, or is intended to keep the country together, is the Constitution. And what is contained in the Constitution is something that we must keep looking at. Those of us who are there for a while, we know how long it took us to get ourselves out of the signature of the Queen. Because the Constitution that we had, and many young people don't know, the Constitution that we had since 1963 up to 2010 had the signature of the Queen. It is the 2010 Constitution that had the signature of a Kenyan in the name of the former President Mwai Kibaki. And it took us a while to move away from there and to get into the Constitution that we have. And it's a good document. But as we said that time and now, it is a living document. Engaging with it to make sure that we implement it is a thing that we must do every day and every time. It is within the mandate of Parliament to ensure that it protects the Constitution, it ensures that the Constitution is implemented, and that the Constitution is answering to the desires of Kenyans from time to time.
But it's also not
Having
lost.
said that, is that what I want to say is that I'm saying this so that at any given point when any person wants to introduce an amendment to the Constitution, what is important is to engage in the debate and get the pros and cons of any amendment. If it is not its time, it will come another time. If it is not an acceptable thing, there is no quarrel. If it is a good thing, we should embrace it. And every time you do that, what you do is try to win as many people as possible to the ideas that you have, because it's not always that an initiative is started when it has a very wide acceptance.
Yeah.
And if you're able to win people, well and good. And I want to say that this is a very useful engagement, because it is an engagement that helps us to talk about it,
right.
Think through it. You have started by asking, is it a time whose time has come? Some will say yes, others will say yes or no. And I'll tell you that back in 2008, I said that we need to do away with the standard 8 examination and ensure that we have 100% transition from standard 7 or standard 8 to Form 1.
Okay.
And I remember Professor Kamal saying on the floor of the House, a good idea whose time has not yet come. And I told her, I think it's long overdue.
Okay.
And we are now there, and you can tell that it's long overdue. So we have the bill, and it's not a new idea. It is an idea that has been there, perhaps earlier than many of us would imagine. Asante.
But just before I go to Ndindi Nyoro, some of the key proposals in this particular bill were contained in the BBI bill, Constitution Amendment Bill of 2020, quashed twice by the courts. The case it has been taken to the Supreme Court now. Why do we imagine we'll get a different reaction in Parliament?
Now, let me first of all give my view on that. That what we got from the court, and this is what you'll always get from any court, is a judgment on that document. But that judgment does not help you deal with the problem if a problem exists. I say it this way again. If, for example, we were looking for money to pay bursaries for children, and the document was nullified by the court, that nullification did not pay the bursary for your child. You still have your child at home because you have no money. So the problem is still with you. And the fact that may have been nullified, that approach may have been nullified, it doesn't mean that you stop looking for a solution to the problem. So I have no problem with the decisions that have been taken by the court, but we have issues that needs to be dealt with. And as leaders, it will be very responsible of us to hold positions and not continue engaging on those issues. And I want to say that we don't have the solutions. The solutions may come with others, but we must start. I finish that section by saying this. The constitution that we have, the 2010 constitution, remember some of the people who started the process of looking for that constitution died before we could get the ink on the pen.
So it's an ongoing process.
So it is an ongoing process, and it's a good thing when Kenyans or people are talking to one another.
Ndindi, why do you think proponents of the BBI, for lack of a better word, are hell-bent on passing this? The court has quashed it twice. We are in the Supreme Court. We've now opted to go the parliamentary initiative way. Do you think this is as important as it is being passed across?
First of all, thank you very much, Akisa, for having us this evening. And I want to start by congratulating my party, UDA, on a very stellar performance earlier today in Gu Ward, in Makueni. You know, if you go to the statistics of 2017, you'll see clearly that now our party is clearly a national party, actually quashing what was there before. Maybe would have been termed the strongholds of other parties. The former Prime Minister had 90% in Makueni in 2017. And in today's elections, we managed to get close to 35%. Even Wiper was a distant third, because the one who won was an independent candidate. And therefore, our party is national. We are fielding candidates everywhere. And as you can see, we are performing very well across the country.
It's a matter of wait and see, but continue.
Going into the issue, I want to say that I think we are wasting too much time, and especially the BBI orphans. I call them the BBI orphans because there seems to be some hangovers from the proponents of BBI that is either their way or the highway. They keep on taking us into routes on issues of constitutional review. Yet the major issue and predicament that Kenyans are facing currently is not of a constitutional nature. Most of it is of an economic nature. Unfortunately, we are wasting too much time on endless constitutional reform proposals, and especially geared towards power. What I have read, I have not had the opportunity to read through the bill as proposed, but what I have read here and there, the parchments, is that there is a proposal about the deputy president's position. I saw another one of creating deputy prime ministers. And we cannot keep on telling Kenyans we are reviewing the constitution for their good and that the constitution is a living document and therefore needs review. Yet, number one, we have not given our constitution enough time to grow. Even when you are pruning, even coffee bushes, for example, you don't start pruning when it's a seed. You start pruning when it's grown. Our constitution is barely 10 years old. And I think we ought to give it time because we took too long to create it. We cannot then come and start meddling on it too short a time within its implementation. And therefore, from where I sit, I think we are being very unfair. And Mheshimiwa Kioni and any other people who are taking Kenyans into routes are being very unfair. Why? Because the courts declared themselves very clearly. From the High Court, it's null and void. The Court of Appeal, it's null and void. I mean, everything about this regime, even today we saw about Huduma number, null and void. Around CASs, null and void. It just speaks to the lawlessness that we have decided on, but more precisely on this document of BBI and its aftermath, that the bill being proposed, is clearly being very insensitive to the people of Kenya. The current situation in our country, we should be putting all our might and all our time and all our resources in trying to see how we can make the lives of Kenyans better. Not in terms of chasing power, knowing which power to be clipped and who to add more power. I think that is a debate that is very unhealthy at this particular time.
Let's bring in Kabando, who's joining us virtually as a former member of parliament for Mukurweini. We've had two voices here. Jeremiah Kioni saying, an idea whose time has come. Even if this thing was quashed in the courts twice, we should be alive to some of the details that need to be fixed as we progress as a nation. But Ndindi simply says we are wasting time. We have other important things to do. I was going to pose that question to Kabando, but technological problems, I'm told we don't have him. So Kioni, I'll bring it back to you. Looking at some of the proposals, to deputy president, the president can, fire, for lack of a better word, the deputy president at will, reducing the threshold by which the deputy president can be impeached to 1/3 nomination, bringing in the position of prime minister to deputy prime ministers. What is this we are trying to fix?
In Parliament, we have many committees, and every committee has its mandate. Every committee has its members. In our constitution, the role of a member of parliament is threefold. It has the issue of representation, it has the issue of registration, and it has the issue of oversight. If a member of parliament proposes a bill, either an amendment to the law or to the constitution, it is not a waste of time. It's actually living up to the reason why you are elected. One. Two, if a member of a committee takes it upon himself or herself, or if a committee decides to leave to the mandate of its committee and proposes an amendment to a law or to the constitution, and that is part of the mandate, it is not a waste of time. CIOC is Constitution Implementation Oversight Committee. That is the full, whatever for the acronyms.
Yeah.
We have the work of 5 years to look at the Constitution, how it is being implemented, whether it is achieving the objectives of why it was enacted, And where we think amendments needs to be done, we should introduce them, bring them to Kenyans and have them to debate them. If they are not useful, Kenyans will say it. But we cannot be termed as insensitive, as lazy, as not thinking about Kenyans, if we then do as mandated by the Constitution,
So what are we
as
fixing?
by the standing orders.
Okay. Fair enough. You've made that point.
You can't allow him to get away with the murder because, you know, that is really talking down to his colleagues in Parliament. When you say one is insensitive, it's not the words that you want to use, and especially when you're talking to your colleagues, because we were all elected, and when we were elected, there was a feeling of those who elected you that you are capable of knowing what to do, when, and how, and this is what we are doing. So, and this is where I started, that when you are in this kind of a debate, you'd rather engage in the substance of the issue than trying to talk about, you know, bad-mouthing others. I do not want to digress too much.
Yes. Tell us
But I
what
want
we are
to tell
fixing.
you,
Yes.
in Norway, because this is one of the problems that breaks a country from within. If you remember what I said, one of the unspoken principles in Norway, you never talk down a colleague. You are seen as a very primitive person if you talk down the other.
And you've made your point. Just
I can
tell us
go
what
on
we're trying
and
to
on
fix
and
with
on
this bill.
because
Yes.
this is our problem in the country, talking down each other. I'll tell you that, again, you have heard him say that we are the orphans of BBI. I have no problem with being called an orphan of BBI. I was a proponent of BBI. I supported BBI, not the BBI because it was just a document, but because it had solutions to some of the problems that we had. The issues that are being put on the table are older than some members of parliament. They are issues that were proposed much earlier and for reasons that are still bedeviling this country. I'm holding a manifesto that was done back in 1997 by Mwai Kibaki. That time there was no BBI. And he had said that when he forms a government, his government will be one led by a president, two vice presidents, one prime minister, 4 deputy prime minister, 23 ministers, including vice president and deputy prime ministers, like I've said before, and 37 deputy ministers, whom we called assistant ministers. So you can actually see that the proposal that we have, which kind of follows this thinking that was there way back in 1997, had been conceived outside BBI. If we are talking of only one constitution amendment, then we'll deal with it. But we have many. There are about 4 or 5 constitution amendments that have been proposed by the CIOC. Some have gone through the first reading. Others have gone through the public participation. Others are going through pre-publication scrutiny. So there are quite a number of them in line with our mandate. So if it is the one on the creation of the position of the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister that you want us to focus on, we will focus on it. And I'll tell you that it is true that it was contained in the BBI document. Yeah. But if you come into the committee and if you ever bothered to have paid attention to what we had thought through, even before the team was formed, that was one of the issues that was there. Let me tell you so that you can see where we are coming from. Another bill that has gone through first reading and public participation is the one that we proposed to that after a general election, the person who comes second as the winner to the seat of the presidency is given the first opportunity to be nominated to Parliament or to the Senate. What were we trying to do? We were trying to cure the current scenario where a person garners almost 48% of the votes and is left outside of the decision-making process in the country. And we thought that is the quicker way of bringing that issue on board. Okay. So that is already going on. And then we have, there is now the issue of, we have the other bill that we went through first reading.
Okay.
and is now awaiting second reading. What does it say? That members of parliament should be appointed to become cabinet minister. That has gone through, including public participation. And we went again, allowed the country, and it received a lot of approval. So when you have done that, what is the next thing that you follow with that? We are now following up with the position of saying we create a position of prime minister, we create the position of deputy prime minister, and the other things that are there.
I really want to speak to Kabando, but meanwhile, just respond to this. The issue around the deputy president, you've talked about the prime minister and the thought process around it for the committee. Why do we feel that it is time to clip the powers of the deputy president?
Let me, first of all, to make it clear to Kenyans, this has nothing to do with William Samoei Ruto. By the time the bill comes into effect, he will have long left the office and either become the president or whichever other law Kenyans
so what is it about?
Him. It is about the office. It is about the governance of this country.
Okay.
It has nothing to do with personalities. And you cannot be able to be objective if you put personalities to those offices.
Okay. I really want you to, I can see you're agitated to respond to that. The office that he's talking about, this is not about the deputy president, but we are also alive to the kind of relationship that President Uhuru Kenyatta and deputy president have shared, and the acrimony around it. Do you agree that with him that maybe we need to fix that office?
First of all, I want to respond to my brother Kioni that when we come to this kind of a debate, you cannot dictate on how the other panelist is going to debate. I've tried to be very polite on him, but having a contrary opinion does not mean that you are talking down on anyone. And also, when you come to the debate and you are the one proposing the bill, you must not battle the entire colleagues, the entire band of MPs and colleagues into your defense. I mean, carry your cross, carry your baggage. I want to repeat again that the bill, I have been listening to Mheshimiwa Kioni very clearly. And if you listened from the first one he has talked about to the last one, it now clearly tells you and shows all the Kenyans what the real BBI was all about. The entire BBI was purely about power sharing. It was purely about personalities. It was purely about leaders. That is why the aftermath of it, after it was declared null and void, has been well spoken by Mheshimiwa Kioni. I was listening. There was no single thing about the real Kenyan people, the majority of the Kenyan people. The number one bill he talked about is about a person who becomes number two. The person that he goes to either the Senate or the National Assembly. The number two, it was about us leaders, MPs, becoming ministers. Number three, it is about the seat of prime minister, two deputy prime ministers and the deputy president. Mheshimiwa Kioni should also tell Kenyans that the seat we are talking about, like the one of deputy president, it is the seat currently occupied by William Ruto that has been disregarded completely by the powers that be. I have also seen Mheshimiwa reading about President Kibaki. Why was it not implemented during his time? Because the practicality of it. And they keep telling us the reason why we are bringing about these many positions, that the president, the deputy president, and the other many at the top cream of the executive, ostensibly, is to cure the issue of bringing around as many people as possible. They call it unity. There cannot be unity when you bring around this ethnicity with their kingpin plus the other one plus the other one. The clear intentions of the real BBI has actually been well enumerated by Mheshimiwa Kioni this evening. That it was purely about positions, it was purely about sharing power, it had nothing to do with the Kenyan people. Otherwise, in all the bills he talked about, I would have hoped at least there is one about the majority of Kenyans. But I want also to add that judging by what is happening currently in Kenyan political landscape, and in terms of positions and respect to those positions, then it shows we have been focusing on the wrong place. On the wrong place of focusing on, like the seats has been talked about, and neglecting the majority. Because currently, the position of the deputy president is only there by name. It is only there in the constitution. In terms of roles, if you live in Kenya, you clearly know that you have no deputy president. You only have one with a tag, but in terms of the roles, they were long transferred. If you cannot respect that one position,
which roles were transferred?
Which is anchored in the constitution, what about now when, number one, you say that the president can wake up one day and sack that deputy president, but also number two, that you want to introduce others. Were it not for this constitution, new constitution, that was fought for many years, I can tell you this for free, Akisa, the deputy president, William Ruto, would have long been replaced by a person like Gideon Moi, because I'm sure, based on how he's being treated, that the only thing protecting him and the only reason that he's in that office is because the hearts of our president are tied by the constitution. My parting shot, as leaders, again, I want to remind all of us, yes, we have a role of registration, we have a role of, even amending our constitution, bringing about bills in parliament, but we have to interrogate the moment and the time at which we are doing any action.
Okay.
Currently, we are talking about fuel. For example, today, I was in parliament. Kenyans are paying 130, close to 140 shillings per litre of fuel. IPRA came today and proposed a reduction of around 5 shillings.
5 shillings.
I think as members of parliament, we should be more engaged on those kind of tangible issues, on those kind of things that are really affecting Kenyans, affecting productivity of our economy, affecting efficiency of our economy, other than all the time we are in a circus of constitutional making. And by the way, we are doing this even after barely 2-3 months after the court declared the entire process and whatever they are in, null and void.
Okay.
I think we need to be serious, and I want to repeat, that is being insensitive to bring about power issues, position issues at such a time that Kenyans need changes that actually reflect on their livelihood.
All right, just to mention, we really wanted to have Kabando here, but we still seem to be having challenges with that network connection. If we're able to have him, we will be able to speak to him on this issue. But what you're seeing on your screen also right now, President Uhuru Kenyatta is at the White House currently meeting with the President of the U.S., Joe Biden. And this would be the first time that Joe Biden is hosting an African leader at the White House as U.S. President. The meeting is also happening at a time when Kenya is chairing the United Nations Security Council for a month, this month of October. And we will be crossing over there live to just take a look at what are some of the conversations that are ongoing at the White House currently, where President Uhuru Kenyatta is meeting with President Joe Biden of the U.S. Key among issues that they are expected to discuss is on bilateral relations between the two countries. They need to bring transparency and accountability to domestic and international financial systems, to discuss efforts to defend democracy and human rights. The two presidents are also expected to touch on issues around advancing peace and security, as well as accelerating economic growth. So this conversation is being picked up after a phone conversation between the two leaders when Joe Biden was elected president of the United States. And as I mentioned earlier, President Uhuru Kenyatta becomes the first leader that Joe Biden is hosting, having been elected president of the United States. So we're keeping our eye on that. Just take a look at what the two leaders will discuss and whether they have any repercussions or any implications to the two countries. We'll be going back there periodically as we continue with this conversation here with the Ndarago Member of Parliament, Jeremiah Kioni, and Ndindi Nyoro, who's the Member of Parliament, Kiharu. Kabando was supposed to join us virtually, but we're still having challenges with technology. But once we get him, he will be able to contribute to this very vibrant conversation going on here on the Crossfire. Back to you, Kioni, and the concern, and especially for those who have been anti-BBI, is that the focus for BBI proponents is keenly on positions, as Ndindi Nyoro has talked about right now. The Deputy President himself says this in almost every rally that they hold, that this focus is only on positions. Looking at what you're saying and what this particular bill is looking at, how do you convince Kenyans that this really is not the true position?
One of the things I was expecting him to answer is what you asked him. What roles have been transferred from the deputy president? That would be useful for him to answer before I come in, so that I can say what it is.
I think when you called me here for the interview, Akisa, I knew you were the interviewer.
Yes, yes. But I did ask that question.
You have been asking Mheshimiwa Kioni, number one, what is he trying to fix? He dodged. Answer that first before you lecture.
I'll answer him.
Okay, I'll give you a chance. But let's.
And when you ask.
Okay. I'll get back with that question because I asked it, but we lost it sometime.
Why I wanted him to answer is because one of the lies that have been propagated for the last 4 years is that there are laws that have been transferred from the deputy president and given to Matiang'i. There are constitutional laws that have been transferred from the deputy president and given to Matiang'i. And I think it is important to say it here. And for Kenyans can check it up in the Constitution. When you created the position of the deputy president and the position of the deputy governor, the only reason why those positions were created, let me not say the only reason, but the reason why those positions were created is to ensure that in the event that we have untimely demise of the president or the governor, we do not end up in a scenario we would have been. I don't know how many of you can remember that the late President Daniel Arap Moi, ruled this country for almost 1.5 years without a vice president. So when we were creating a position for the deputy president, in our mind at Naivasha we said, never again should we ever allow a person to keep a country with that kind of a suspense. So there were no laws that were assigned to the deputy president.
And now we want
none. His is to deputize the president. Oh. And he can be told what to do, or he keeps waiting as is provided for in the Constitution, both for the office of the deputy president and for the office of DG. Remember in the BBI document, some laws were being given to the deputy governor because none exist to date. And I think it is important to mention that. The other one that I want to say is that he talked about the fuel. And it helps me reinforce the position that I said earlier. We have committees that run the business of the House. The issue of fuel was properly before the committee that is relevant. They tabled a report today for us as members of parliament to either accept or reject. Every committee must remain faithful to the mandate it was given, either by the standing orders or a statute or by the Constitution, like the case in a committee. So to think ill of any proposal we put on the table, that is a starting of perhaps an indication of a need to understand some of these processes.
So back to my question, how do you convince Kenyans that this is not about power sharing and it's not about the 2022 race where we will make it easier for people to promise each other positions?
By the way,
in the conversations around, how do you convince Kenyans that this is about them?
I don't know why you also look like you want. Let me ask this young man to come and help me. Come and show you. So that you can see that when we are talking about this country, kuja unisaidie hapa. Naweka kamera hapa. Because kuja.
You can just sit down so that because our cameras are.
It is bigger than the seat.
Just sit down so that we are able to see what you have with you here.
Hapa, if you look at this, I need somebody to help me so that I can help you. Shika hapa. If you look at this, these are maps talking about how we have performed as a country since 1988 when we started doing elections, actually a little bit earlier. And you can actually see the pattern, the way the economy has performed. We are at a high when we are not doing campaigns. A year before campaigns, we start dropping. The year of elections, we at our lowest. The following year, we start climbing. Before we even have done a proper recovery, we start campaigning again and we drop. And this has continued on for the last 5 elections that we have had in this country. That is the growth of the GDP. That is the way it has been growing. If you look at this, it talks about the sectors that are affected by the electoral cycles that we have in the country. Agriculture, farming, fishery, forestry and logging, and we have fishery and manufacturing, or aquaculture. We have here the secondary sectors. They perform the same way. Some of them even end up with a negative growth. Why? Because we lose 3 years in every, actually we lose 6 years in every 10 years of economic growth. You can actually see in the sector of mining, and these are, by the way, these are graphs available in our records, because this is from Kenya.
Bureau of Statistics.
Kenya Bureau of Statistics. And you'll see how the mining and quarrying perform, manufacturing, electricity supply, construction. You will also see here the service sector, which carries, including the issues of
Fair enough.
tourism and the rest.
Fair enough.
The issues of sales and the rest. This is not what you expected, without a doubt. But the kind of debate that we are talking about is not a debate to talk about, because, you know, if we are not able to put our mind in this kind of thing, and let it be here. So the question is, irrespective of what you want to do as the president, and irrespective of who becomes our president tomorrow, how do we fix this oscillation of our sectors, our GDP, and the rest? In another day or two, we will have information that we'll be able to present to Kenyans. That in the every 3 years, the year before elections, the year of elections, and the year after elections, we lose close to 600 billion shillings in our economy.
Thank you. And
for the last 5 years, 5 elections that we have, we've lost close to 3 trillion shillings. There is no way we will be able to provide employment to our people. There is no way we will ever be able. It does not matter which economic model you come with.
Okay.
And so it does.
Let me just ask this as you continue, because we're taking quite some time, and I know Ndindi would want to respond to that. And you have clearly taken us through what kind of oscillation in the economy we go through in election years. Does expanding the executive, creating positions, does it fix that? I really want you to answer to that without taking too much time.
And you don't need a lot of time will be taken. This is not an issue to play with.
But we're working with time here, and I understand.
Yes.
We will discuss this some other time.
It's very easy. Let me tell you, it's very easy to talk about this thing on a political platform, because when you are doing with populist things. But when you want to fix the country, it requires serious thinking.
Okay.
And one of the things that we need to ask ourselves, why is it that we have such corrosive political atmosphere during our times? It is because... All right, carry on.
With all due respect, we really need you to respond to the question at hand. We will come up with another show to talk about this, to break down some of these issues.
This is the answer. I have no other answer.
But are you telling Kenyans tonight that expanding the executive will fix this?
What I'm telling Kenyans tonight is, it does not matter who is in power. You must address the issues that make us lose 600 billion shillings every 3 years of our electoral cycle.
And expanding the executive, is it?
One of them is to reduce the corrosive level of our politics.
Okay.
We must reduce the competitiveness of our politics.
There is
and as you take over, allow us to form coalitions that reduce the nature of competition that we have, an unnecessary competition.
Fair enough. You've made your point.
I have been following, and I have to say that I'm really, really disappointed today, because listening to my colleague here, if I got the answer, because you ask about creating positions and the effect on the graph, and he said that is the answer, that having Prime Minister and the President and his two deputies will cure the entire issue around the economy being battered during the election cycle. Number one, whatever kind of coalitions we are going to build, Akisa, the fact remains that politics will still be competitive. So that even if you create the positions they purported in the BBI and the ones they want to create now, we will still have people competing. The fact that then you have a president, two deputies, and whatever number of other people in the cream of the executive, it doesn't mean we are not going to have elections. We're still going to have elections. I want to take you back to 2007. The exact positions they are creating, the only change semantics and names. That was what was called Pentagon in 2007. They had 5 people at the top cream. So the coalition was already built. Kenyans fought. We have to interrogate ourselves as Kenyans. Why do actually people fight during the election cycle? To my understanding, I may be young, maybe my recollection serves me only maybe from 2007, thereabout. But I have to say, one of the biggest issues that we face during election times and the challenges is the people who go to the election, the people who go into competitive politics with only one outcome in their mind, that they have to win. So when they don't win, then they put our country into a quagmire. The fact that our leaders do not know how to accept the will of the people, to me that is one of the issues and one of the reasons people fight. Number 2, about the economy and graphs. You know, it is laughable to purport that our economy performs the way it performs simply because we have elections. Majority of the countries in this world and this globe are democracies. Even almost all the OECD countries, that the economies that have really grown, and the top cream of the economies of the world, majority are democracies, starting with the US and the rest. There are other forms of governance. There is democracy. If you go to Qatar, for example, the richest in terms of GDP per capita, for them they don't have a democracy. I mean, it's ruled by the ruling family of the Al Thani. What am I trying to say? Economies across the world, if you study, and I wish Mheshimiwa Kioni took some time to study other dynamics around how economies perform. Economy even of the US, there are always oscillations. There is no example in the world, and he can table it here, of an economy that started from low, it only goes into unprecedented growth without oscillations. The real issue about governance and in relation to the economy, there are not two things, Akisa. It's not about changing our country. It is not about changing positions. It is purely about the content of the leadership of the regime running the country. That is why I wish this graph would have been broken down during the regime of our first president. Then we come to the regime of the second president. Then we come to the regime of the third president, Mwai Kibaki. And then we compare the same with the current regime of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Then you'd have seen clearly that invariably, one of the components of the economic growth is not about tumefubua mafuta. It's not about we have discovered minerals. It is about who is in power, what direction, what mind, what brain is actually in power. That is why if you compare President Moi's time, we had Kenya the same boundaries, the same whatever we have within our country, yet our country, majority of the people were poor. Then we come to the regime of President Mwai Kibaki. You cannot tell me that this graph talks to that our economy was doing very badly at around maybe $15 billion in terms of GDP size. Then you come during President Kibaki's time, around 10 years, then economic miracles happen. Then you want to tell us it's about elections. It is about the people in power. I want to give you another example. because economy has many parameters. When you measure GDP, you have to balance that the same with per capita because of the growth of the population. You have to balance the same with, for example, borrowing rate. You have to juxtapose the same with revenue growth. I give that statistics here in this studio, and I want to give it for the benefit of my colleague Mheshimiwa Kioni. When Mheshimiwa Moi left this country, we were collecting partly 200 billion. Now this speaks to the volume and the breadth of the entire economy. We were collecting only 200 billion in terms of the national collection. Our debt then was around 600 billion dollars. Billion shillings. During the time of President Kibaki, 10 years, we saw unprecedented growth. Every Kenyan knows you were finishing KU, you were finishing UON, finishing Egerton, or any other university, you could get a job the following month in a bank, the following month in a SACCO, the other month in a media house, because the economy was growing. Real economic growth was there. What happened because of that brain and real economic growth? Our collection, in terms of national collection and revenues, moved from 200 billion to $1 trillion when President Kibaki left. Our debt moved only from 600 billion to just around 1.8 trillion Kenya shillings. Now let me give you the shocker of this regime that Mheshimiwa now, they want us now to be in a crucible where we are not only taught about and lectured about how we are going to create positions to solve a problem that is really actually brought about by bad leadership. President Kibaki left our economy, left our correction at 1.61 trillion.
Okay.
Now, the 8 years of President Uhuru Kenyatta, that revenue has only grown from 1 trillion to 1.6 trillion on the higher side. We have actually not reached there yet. Okay. Those are projections. Let me make this point. That is 60% growth. Yeah. The President Kibaki's time, if you calculate, it is 500% growth. Borrowing that President Kibaki got at 600 billion, left it at 1.8 trillion. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta in 8 years, we are now approaching 10. We are now in excess of 11 trillion Kenya shillings. Overborrowed even beyond the limits set by ourselves and Mheshimiwa Kioni and other colleagues in Parliament. What point am I driving home? Majority of the graduates graduating from our universities would be lucky to get a job. In this era now, for any person to get a job either in government, even in private sector, you need to bribe.
Okay.
Why? Because of the scarcity of the jobs. So that graph ought to have talked about regimes and the agents driving the regimes. And for that, the statistics I've given, you can clearly see that the unprecedented growth during President Kibaki's time has been an ISO now, has been a letdown during President Uhuru Kenyatta's time. So for you, because I've given pure statistics. He talked about Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, mine are from the same government entity. So, and therefore, the issue about graphs, economic growth, election cycle are about to be there. Competitive politics is about to be there. The issue is who is actually leading the country and in what direction.
Bad leadership.
It is purely about leadership.
He's talked about, let me let you respond to that because you've asked.
Bad leadership of Uhuru. And I'm trying to move away from individuals in that manner. One is that when you talk about 2007, and he has said it very nicely, there were Pentagon, 5. It was Giru, Barara, Raila, Ruto, and Kalonzo, if I'm not wrong. What were they looking for? The presidency, one position. So they had come together to fight for one position. So if you are trying, I think what he has done is to justify what I was just going to say. But I want to just again agree with what he has said. Look at 2007. It is true that during Kibaki's time, the economy grew. We went to 7% build. When we started campaigning and we had that corrosive enforcement in the country, we dropped to that point. We needed another whole year
to go back up.
3 years we lost. So all that Kibaki has done was lost in 3 years because of electioneering and competition that came created by the Pentagon. So what he has done is actually to confirm that it is possible to grow the economy. But how can we then maintain that growth when we hit the high? Can you imagine if we continued at 7.7% growth up to today. But we were not able. We dropped because of the 2000 elections that were there. Come back to 2000, and if you look at it here, then we got ourselves a new constitution, 2010. Confidence level was there. And we thought things were going to go on. And you'll actually see, after the constitution of 2010, we haven't quite dropped. 2017, if you ask me, I will attribute it to handshake. We did not go to this level. But if we don't fix that quarrel that comes after every over 5 years, then we will not be able, we will continue with this oscillation. And this graph confirms exactly what he has said.
Let me ask
but
this.
let me just,
finish
say this. When you talk about 2002 and the Kibaki coming into power, I don't know whether you can remember. When we campaigned 2002, we campaigned all of us together.
For one
and
cause.
We were removing Kanu. We wanted to come in one team and make sure that the country... So there was the confidence level in the country was so high that Kenyans would learn and arrest a police officer whom they thought was taking a bribe. That confidence level encouraged people from all walks of life to invest in the country. The economic growth, it was actually a miracle, the kind of things we were seeing happening. How can we be able to get that kind of confidence level in our electioneering time that we are also happy, or the majority of us, adequate majority of us, are happy with the outcome of an election, that we concentrate on investing in the country, growing the economy? Because if we do that, it does not matter the economic model you put in place if we don't fix this. But if we are able to fix it, then we are certain that these unemployment levels that we have in this country are going to be dealt with. But I want to tell you this. For as long as we continue oscillating this way, it does not matter whether it is which model you want to have as a president. We will still lose whatever you have done after a couple of years. And the danger here is, the danger is this. If we don't fix it, I have come up with my thinking of how to fix it. And it is a committee that is thinking.
Allow me to ask this.
It is only fair that you say, what is your alternative to the fixing it?
Allow me to ask this. Yes. Hypothetically speaking, this passes and we have room to elect more people to the executive structure. And then we go to an election. Are you telling Kenyans tonight that we will not see these vicious fights over positions? Bearing in mind that our problems are far beyond that. We have an electoral process that we don't trust. We have issues with electoral malpractice year in and year out that we haven't fixed. Public confidence that is low on our electoral commission. We have ethnicity issues in our politics also. So are we saying that this fixes everything?
No, it doesn't. And that's what I started by saying. Do your bit. Kibaki used to tell us, how kuzaliwa ufanye yote, lakini fanya kitu uodoke. Do something. Try and do something. I am trying to fix it. Don't block it or give a better solution. There is the issue of electioneering. Let another team try and fix it. Not one person can fix it. But it's of no value for us to come and sing of the problems that we have or to occupy the country for 4 or 5 years telling us about the problems we sent you to fix. We are elected to Parliament and to the Senate and to the County Assembly, to the governor's offices, to fix the problems of Kenyans. And we should be competing in fixing, not competing in blocking ideas. We should be competing in having ideas on the table.
Okay, we only have about 5 minutes.
It is wrong, Akisa, for anyone to put words into my mouth when millions of Kenyans are watching and they can clearly understand. We are talking very simple language here. I said in 2007, we had something that was called Pentagon. Ideally, it was sharing power. It was sharing the positions that were available. Whatever name you give them, it is neither here nor there. The country still fought. So what I'm trying to say is that even if we introduce the many positions, Akisa, we'll still have our party with Akisa, the other one. Then we compete with the other people. But if we defeat the other people, and then they do not concede defeat, the problem is that we are still going to fight. Because this coalition is defeated by the other coalition. And in Kenya, by the way, all the time, even in 2002, Whereas even the Rainbow had a coalition that was visible, even the other side had a coalition. Because a coalition is the personalities, it is the support bases that are in a fragment or in a grouping. So, in a situation like this one, we are headed to the general elections next year, Akisa. There is now the BBI orphans. I suppose maybe they were creating positions for themselves. That is why maybe they seem angry and defeated every time they appear on a show like this one, because they cannot clearly articulate how are these positions going to help in terms of what you are going to cure.
All right.
So what I'm trying to say is this. We'll have their coalition. The Kenyans, for example, or the other hustlers, will have now the other coalition. The fact is that one of those coalitions will be elected.
Will have to win.
And the other one will not be elected. So how have you cured? That is my point. But I want to reinforce the issue of the economy. And I want us to understand this very clearly. Countries that either are democracies, meaning they are electioneering cycles, and others that actually do not have those electioneering cycles, the economic oscillations are permanent to both of them. Study the economy of UAE. UAE is not a democracy, but they go through oscillations given the economic times.
Okay.
Like now, they are in a low because they are economy there is a big proportion about tourism, the other one about trade. They have been affected by the pandemic, for example. Let me make this point, Akisa.
As we wind up.
If you compare the same to other democracies, for example, the US, maybe another modified democracy like China or in others, they still have oscillations. The issue about the economy is not the oscillation. It is usually about what is the long-term graph. How is the long-term graph drawn? And I have given my point, and even Mheshimiwa Kioni cannot be able to fight those facts.
Yeah, but allow
that
me to
the
say
issue
something
about
also.
leadership in Kenya, I have
finish.
given.
Let me say it also.
Just finish your point, 30 seconds. Finish it. Finish it in 30 seconds so that I give him a chance. We wrap it up.
Yeah.
If you compare the economy of Russia, the economy of South Korea, the economy of America, that is the USA, there is also always oscillations. And then trying to fix those oscillations around the electioneering period is convenient. But then tell us, how are you going to cure those oscillations? Because I don't think creating positions for 5 men is going to cure that. Okay. What is going to cure that is for us to have hygiene in our politics, where I accept if you run in Daragwa and you don't succeed in getting majority of the votes, then give the other person an opportunity to
let
lead.
him give him a
and
chance.
The problem is those people who do
up.
not concede defeat.
Okay.
They are the ones who keep our country in perpetual fight after every election.
All right, Honorable Kioni, I'm giving you a minute or so to just...
And two things. One is that even the people who thought about these things are long gone. Some of them are in the names of Matiba. They are long gone. So they did not, if you think of positions and see individuals, you are really not thinking as a leader. 2, look at this graph. Our oscillations, if I may borrow that word, I don't quite understand it, but I believe it is the ups and downs. Happens every time we have elections. Any retro education will tell you, you must then understand what are these factors that force us or cause us to lose our growth in all the sectors every time we have elections. You fix those factors.
Okay.
Then you'll have a continuation of this growth. And I'm saying it is our corrosive nature of competing for only one position. If we are not competing for one position, and look at it, you know, the previous language was that we are creating positions for people and it is going to be expensive for people.
Okay.
When we then say these people are actually members of parliament, there's no other salary, then another debate comes. Let me also say this, it's important. We will have formations, without doubt. We had them 2013, we had them 2017, we had them 2007. The winner is at 52%, the loser is at 48%. That is a country divided. I am telling you, if for as long as we don't pay attention to that very narrow win in our situation as a country, we will continue having the scenarios that we had that time. And let me say this also. Remember, the difference between NASA and Jubilee 2017 was 1,400,000 votes. 1.4 million votes. A very thin line. Very thin line. If we don't pay attention to that thinness of whoever wins tomorrow, we are not actually being responsible for the time that we are in office.
Okay. I want you now to...
do you abandon living in this house?
Would you want me to finish?
There would be an earthquake.
Do you want me to finish?
Let me let him.
By the way,
Honorable Kioni,
one of the things, why is it that we put lightning arresters? It's so that we are not struck by lightning.
But Honorable
so
Kioni,
common sense will tell you that you must take precautionary measures to ensure that we do not have a disaster.
The director is on my case. I would like you to give us your closing remarks, but I really want you to respond to this even as you give us your closing remarks, because you've made a case for why perhaps we need to expand the executive structure, but why do we need to water down the powers, perhaps, quote unquote, of the DP, reduce the threshold for how he can be impeached, give the president, leave the deputy presidents at the whims of the president. Maybe just respond to that as you give us your closing remarks, because it's something that I've seen
no powers
on social
being
media.
reduced for the deputy president, for the reason that there are no powers given to him in the Constitution. What Kenyans should be asking themselves is, do we want to give the deputy president's office power?
Were we leaving the office to the whims of the president?
You always have to ask yourself this. If you create powers in the office of the deputy president, and it is not the current one that we have today, and powers in the presidency, what if they decided to start exercising their own powers? You have split the country. We must stop looking at individuals and look at the good of every institution. And this is the Kenya. Okay. You cannot give some powers to an office. What about if the office decides to rebel, like the case is today? If the deputy president had constitutional powers, we would not be having a country. We have now
But he doesn't have any.
We have now seen, even without powers, how a deputy president can behave and actually disorientate the flow of the country. A reason as to why we cannot even have proper economic growth. Would you then allow this to continue into the future? What if we even get even a stronger deputy president in that office? We will again lose the country.
What if we get a rogue president with all these powers?
Listen to this. We are not saying that the president will sack the deputy president.
We are making it easy for him.
Lead it clearly. We still need the approval of Parliament and the approval of the Senate. But it also needs to be clear that you cannot sit in an office and decide to become disruptive for purposes of, making your boss look bad. Okay. And then we as readers don't do something for the future.
10 seconds,
not
closing
for today.
remarks. 10 seconds, closing remarks.
I say this
that
closing
Ndindi
remarks.
Can finish us.
It is very important to pay attention to this number, 1.4 million votes. Ask yourself, as we head towards 2022 elections, we had 1.4 million votes in the Uhuru Ruto camp.
Okay. Ndindi.
What becomes of Uhuru Ruto minus Uhuru with this 1.4?
Okay. Fair enough, Ndindi. You get to have the last one.
I mean, all the questions you have asked, and especially about the bill, the response has been incorrigible. I have not understood any single thing that is trying to cure the problems given by the same member and the solutions. They are miles apart. They are miles apart. There is no correlation. Are we going to do away with elections? Are we going to do away with democracy? Are we going to do away with competitive politics? All that will be there. We have to stop this issue of superficially cherry-picking points here and there so that they become convenient for us when we want to use them. The issue is that this regime has put Kenyans into a hole, an economic hole, an economic abyss. And now they are trying to look for points here and there, on reasons here and there, on why they have underperformed. We have also been treated into a very clear picture on what BBI was all about. It was about a few men sharing power. Our courts declared the entire exercise as null and void. I want to say here in this studio,
in 10 seconds,
it will still be null and void in Parliament. And even if they use the money and intimidation, our courts are still going to declare it null and void. Let us not continue wasting Kenya's money Kenyans time over null and void issues that are neither here nor there and that are not adding any value to the real Kenyan people.
I'd love to have more time to continue to speak about this, but we'll always have another time. And even as we continue to study and see the kind of progress that this particular bill makes in Parliament, we
were not talking about BBI.
Yes, we were talking about your bill.
I wish you talked about BBI.
All right, then we will have another session and talk about this. But gentlemen, asanteni sana for joining us here tonight on the Crossfire. Jeremiah Kioni is a member of parliament in Ndaragwa. Ndindi Nyoro is member of parliament Kiharu. Apologies, technology has failed us today. We were supposed to speak to Kabando Akabando, who's a former member of parliament Mkurueni, virtually, but unfortunately that has not been possible. That's how we wrap up Crossfire. Thank you for joining us tonight. We'll be seeing you again next Thursday with perhaps a more vibrant panel or not. We'll be having that conversation again next Thursday as we take a look at the politics making headlines and forming part of conversations on social media and beyond. I am Akisa Wandera. Have a good night.